Today I am showing you the watercolor techniques that will stop your paintings from looking amateur. There's one right way to do it and a lot of wrong ways to do it. Let me show you. Hard edges are every beginner watercolor artist's nightmare. We don't want them, but we have no idea how to stop making them. Feathering in watercolor is essentially when you blend out an edge, when you dissolve it to give that soft watercolor look we all try so hard to achieve. And feathering isn't lifting, okay? It is not about removing paint when it's already dry. Feathering is about water control and how you can use your brush with the right amount of water to make an edge disappear. Okay, so here's how not to do feathering. Let's paint something here. Now let's see if we can add a lot of water to it. As you can see, using a lot of water causes the paint to flow with the water and spread. It's gorgeous and it's essentially how you create paint swatches, but not what you want to happen when you're trying to keep your edges contained. If the paint follows the water and you keep adding water, soon enough that object will be a lot bigger than you intended. Now, another way not to do it is to try and force it out. Let me make another blob of paint here. So when you're trying to move the paint out with your brush, you are making it slightly lighter, but that's not what we want either. So here's how we do the feathering technique correctly. We wash our brush and we dry it, okay? I would say we dry it until it's like 20–30% wet, so more dry than wet actually. And then we use the brush while the paint is still wet. This is very important. You need to be really quick, particularly if you're not using 100% cotton paper. The paint needs to be wet, not damp, not dry. Now you just dab at it until you see that edge disappear and diffuse into a subtle value scale of the color. And you can go back with your brush as many times as you need for the effect you want. You can use some paper towel, a rag, your hands, whatever you need to dry this out. The brush being the right wetness is key for this. And as you can see, we did not expand the object, we did not drag the paint around, we just diffused the edge. And if we keep going, it will just get more and more diffused. You just keep at it until it is almost unnoticeable. You see how light it's getting. We can do this all around. And this is feathering. And I've actually kind of made a 3D cube. Not intentionally, but that's what you get. No hard edges, no straight lines, just a lot of diffusing. Now, do you see the difference between what we did before and what we did here? This is what we want, okay? We don't want too much water. And we definitely just don't want to push the paint around because as you can see, you're still getting kind of a hard edge around it. Here, there is no hard edge. It's just softness, okay? It's just the values toning down and yeah, this is perfect. Now, I know this is all sounding a little bit abstract, like, yeah, I've seen what you've done, but what does that mean when you're actually painting? So let me show you an example. We want a nice dark blue and we just start outlining our circle with the darkest possible paint we can. I could probably get it a little bit a thicker consistency, like a cream or something like that, but let's say this is what we have. So if we leave it to dry as is, this will be a big hard edge, right? But if we do some feathering, let's see. So we dry this and we just start. Start doing it like this. You want to keep that brush nice and dry, okay? So keep drying that brush and we just keep going. And essentially I'm wetting it just to clean out the paint, okay? We don't want to move paint around. Just want to diffuse the edges. See what I did there? I was already moving paint. That's not what we want. We do not want to move paint around. That isn't what we're doing here. We're just diffusing the paint. We want this to be as soft of a transition as we can possibly make it. And look at that, guys. Now, how cool is this? Do you remember what we had to start with? Everything was blue. But as I feathered with my brush, without water, I just kept at it, and now you have a really nice change of value, a really soft one. And you know, I could keep going. This is still a little bit too harsh for me. So if I went back, dried it again, this is getting a little bit too wet. And just try to diffuse it a little bit more, like this, for example. I mean, it will look even better. This is something that I practice all the time, okay? It is also a really, really good warm-up exercise. Let's see what happens if I bring on a little bit more paint back here. As you can see, my paper is still plenty wet. You can see from the way that the paint diffuses, right? Still very, very wet, and that's how we want it. So we can do it all over again, just like that. Just diffuse the whole thing. There we have it. We did it all over again, and it is looking even better, even softer in my opinion. This is really awesome to do, like to draw fruit, for example. If this was orange, we could definitely do an orange with this, or an apple or whatever, but look at this. How cool is this? This is something that I practice all the time, as I was saying. It's something that pros still train as well, so it is basic watercolor, okay? If you want to be able to use what's best about watercolor, the shading, the subtlety, the change in values, this is what you need to master, okay? And as you can see, it's not that hard. It's just a little bit of practice, like if we go to the gym to practice a muscle, this is muscle memory, okay? Your hand needs to learn how to do this easily, effortlessly, and that's what I'm showing you here today. Now, another thing to consider is the paper you're using, okay? You can get very different results depending on that. So let me just go ahead and try do exactly this with cellulose paper real quick. This is Winsor & Newton 25% cotton, I think, so cellulose for the most part. And let's try this again. I'm even going to use the same color just to make sure. And it's a different game for starters because cellulose just doesn't absorb the paint as much. So it's all very at the surface. I can see it right now, you know, this is puddling. Nothing of what I did before puddled. So there's a big difference right there. So let's just go ahead, yeah. This is going to, immediately my brush gets filled with unwanted paint because the paint isn't being absorbed. Let's just try and keep feathering this out. So, you know, for me, what I've noticed about cellulose paper is it is either too wet or too dry, because in watercolor you paint with water, not paint. So if you can't control the water, it's really, really hard to control the paint. Yeah, and now it's too dry. This is exactly what I was talking about here, guys. I will say, this is actually nicer than I thought it would, but there's really no comparison, is there? Subtlety here, you know, water splots here, it's probably going to turn into a hard edge. and there is no subtlety. It's like I always say, if you can invest in one thing, forget about the paint, forget about the brushes. The paper makes the biggest difference, particularly when you're learning, because pros can work with anything really, but beginners like us, we need the paper. Such a big difference with such a simple technique. I hope this helped, and I will see you soon. Bye bye!